soul family. Welcome back to another episode of Path of Awakening. I am Heather Ashley. Today's episode, we're going to get a little bit personal and deeply spiritual. We're talking about what really happens when we die, and I'm going to take you through my own near-death experience as well. What I felt, what I did or didn't see, and how it completely shifted my understanding of the soul entirely. We'll dive deep into, what science says happens to the brain and what many believe happens to the soul and what the journey looks like after we cross over. I'll also cover what the life review actually is and how long souls typically wait before incarnating. So take a deep breath. This is going to be a very deep one. And let's start with the body and the brain. So when someone comes close to death, the brain loses oxygen fast. In those final moments, the brain releases a flood of chemicals, endorphins and serotonin to be exact. Sometimes even a burst of electrical activity may occur. Some scientists think that this is, where the whole light at the end of the tunnel or imagery like that may come from. But here's what's fascinating. Some people flatline, no heartbeat, no measurable brain activity, and yet they still come back with detailed, vivid experiences. So how can that be? They describe scenes, conversations, even locations that they couldn't have never even possibly knew about. Even if their own eyes were closed or if they were unconscious, it still occurs. This suggests something important, that maybe consciousness doesn't come from the brain. Maybe it just flows through it. Now, let's talk a little bit about near-death experiences. So NDEs are fascinating because they sit at the intersection of science, consciousness, and spirituality. From a neurological standpoint, here's what we know. So what happens to the brain, in a scientific view? So there's reduced oxygen, which is known as hypoxia. This is when the brain, when the body is close to death, oxygen flow to the brain often decreases sharply. This can trigger vivid hallucinations, bright lights, or feelings of euphoria. The brain may react to this lack of oxygen in unusual ways. There's also a surge in brain activity. Surprisingly, studies on rats and some human patients show that a brief burst of hyperactivity in the brain just before death, especially in the visual cortex and the temporal lobes. This may contribute to the whole life flashing before your eyes or the tunnel at the end of the light, phenomena. There's also a release of endorphins. Like I had mentioned earlier, the body might release a rush of endorphins and serotonin as well, which could explain this feeling of peace and love and detachment from pain that many people do report with NDEs. Then there's also REM intrusion. Some researchers suggest that NDEs might be similar to like when you go into the REM sleep phenomena, such as lucid dreaming or sleep paralysis. The brain might activate, REM-like states, during trauma, leading to out-of-body experiences or dream-like visions, like astral projection and lucid dreaming. But here's where it gets interesting. So, despite these physical explanations, many NDEs defy the limits of the brain's function during trauma. People have reported, seeing events of people, or people in other rooms verified later on, or having like life reviews with intense clarity and emotion, and then also encountering beings or deceased loved ones that they know could not possibly have been there, gaining insight, that they couldn't have possibly known beforehand. These experiences often happen when brain activity is minimal or even flatlined, which challenges a strictly, physical explanation. So, do NDEs differ from person to person? Is it based on their individual beliefs or their expectations? Some researchers suggest that personal or cultural beliefs can influence the content of an NDE. For example, someone who believes in angels may see angelic beings, while someone with no religious background might just feel peace or a presence. Brain chemistry and psychology, not every brain reacts the same way to trauma and oxygen loss or neurochemical surges, wherein, the brain is the most active, or how your body handles the shutdown process. It could shape what you actually feel or even perceive. So, what is our purpose, or the soul mission? So from a spiritual view, like from a metaphysical perspective, not everyone needs to see visions or receive messages during their NDE. Some people are meant to feel peace, while others might be shown something to awaken or redirect their life path. Each experience is tailored to the soul's journey. So, is there any scientific proof that the soul or consciousness leaves the body, or if they even exist? Science hasn't proven the existence of the soul in the traditional sense, but there are compelling areas of research. So, consciousness outside the brain. Some NDE cases involve vivid out of body experiences where people accurately describe things happening in another room, or in places that they physically couldn't have seen while they were, experiencing their NDE. Dr. Pim van Lommel, a cardiologist, studied patients who had no brain activity during cardiac arrest and still had vivid, accurate experiences, suggesting that consciousness might exist independently of the brain. The AWARE study, which is it's called the AWARE, it's awareness during resuscitation. It's a study that is led by Dr. Sam Parnia. They monitored cardiac arrest patients and placed hidden targets in hospital rooms only visible from above. A few patients had verifiable accounts of conversations and visuals from times when they were clinically dead. And then quantum physics and consciousness. Some theories in quantum consciousness, like those by by Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, suggest that consciousness, it might not be a non-local phenomena, meaning, it's not just created by the brain, but perhaps received or transmitted through it, rather. So while mainstream science has definitely, not proven the soul or consciousness leaving the body, the evidence keeps building up in that direction. And experiences like mine, and other people's, that deep peace without visuals, are absolutely valid and incredible, and incredibly profound. Now, let me share my own experience. When I had my near death experience, I didn't see the white light. There was no tunnels, no visuals. But what I did feel, was the most peace that I had ever known in my life. It wasn't just relief, it was, total freedom. No fear, no pressure, no pain, just presence, basically, and just peace. But then something shifted, and that peaceful feeling, it was still there, of course, but I also felt, it ahead of me, but behind me, there was like a different feeling, a heavier, more dense feeling, I guess you could say. And it was like, I stood at a threshold, the peace was calling me forward, but, something else, was pulling me back to here. And it was then, I knew that I was meant to go further, here, and that it wasn't my time. It wasn't time to go forward. Well, not yet, anyways. So, um, that contrast, though, that moment where I felt, the pull of both realms, it stayed with me. It very much did. And it actually, shaped who I am today, and everything as well. Because it showed me that this soul, it showed me this, that the soul really does exist beyond the body, and that the peace we feel in those moments is a return to our natural state. So, what happens if we do fully cross over? Well, um, many people describe, a life review. A life review usually takes, so many days. Um, it's not a judgment. It's not a punishment. It's more like a re-experiencing of your life, from every perspective, if you will. So you feel how your words, your actions, your energy, all of that, how it impacted others as well as yourself, and you understand it all through love. Then there are many souls, that enter what's called the between lives realm. It's a place of healing, and reflection, as well as reconnection. And then some call it, like some call it heaven, some call it source, some call it, you know, um, you know, the peaceful place or whatever. I call it a waiting room, basically. Others just say it feels like home. And here's the part, that fascinates so many people, um, is how long do souls stay there before reincarnating again? Well, the truth is, it varies. It depends on how, what's in that person's soul contract, and it also depends on what's planned out for their soul. Some souls return quickly, within years, and some even months. Others wait centuries. So there's no ticking clock, there's no deadline, because time doesn't exist there. Souls return when they're ready, or when their soul contract calls them back. And sometimes they don't even return to Earth at all. Sometimes they may go, to somewhere else out there in the stars. It just depends on what's in their contract or what's laid out for their soul. It depends on the person, or the person's soul. They might go to another realm, they may go to another dimension, or even become a guide, or someone still, to someone that's here still on Earth. So why did I come back? Well, why do some of us return after touching such a kind of peace like that? And I believe it's because we're meant to be bridges between worlds. I know I'm a bridge between the stars, and for star seeds and the earth realm. I'm also a bridge between the spiritual world and world. And it's all about bringing a peace into this world, and helping others remember it too. That shift I felt, the pull between peace and presence, it was my soul saying, not yet, you have more to do. So, if you've ever felt that peace or longed to feel it again, know this: that peace is real, and it's within you already. It's not just waiting at the end of the life, to experience that. It's part of who you are, actually. So you can feel it anytime, at any place, that you want to. And you don't have to be having an NDE or actually dead to feel that. You are more than your body, you're more than your pain, and you're more than this moment. You are eternal, and you are never alone. So just remember that. Well, thank you guys for walking today's journey with me. Don't forget to like and share this video. Also, please leave me your comments and let me know what your thoughts are, or if you've ever had an NDE yourself. If you did, what was your experience like? Did you see any light at the end of the tunnel? Did your life flash before your eyes? I would really love to know. And please be sure to follow me on TikTok and YouTube. Both my channels are Path of Awakening. Until next time, stay grounded, stay open, and keep remembering who you really are inside. Until then, love and light. Bye.